Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 63 of the Horsemen podcast. And only the two-man show, myself and Ricky, are here, and
hmm
intentionally wore Black Sabbath shirts. So,
Exactly. Because today, for the first time ever in the show, we're doing a rank 'em all. And of course, it was
yes.
fitting we could do the band that started it all, the mighty Black Sabbath.
Yep, indeed. Because, after all, without Black Sabbath, none of us would be here.
I mean, metal wouldn't be here in general. I mean, in terms of musically, I mean, Sabbath's one of the most influential bands ever.
Yes. No doubt the most influential metal band of all time.
No question about it.
So, figured a good place to kind of begin is kind of talk about how we got into Sabbath.
hmm
So, for me, I got into Sabbath courtesy of my parents because they were already into classic rock. You know, Steve Miller, AC/DC, Van Halen, the Monkees, and bunch of other stuff, and Black Sabbath songs would pop up, like particularly Iron Man and Paranoid and War Pigs would be like the
hmm
primary songs you would hear from them on the radio all the time. And our classic rock station 107.5, The Dog, would play all kinds of classic rock, and sometimes Black Sabbath would come up. And then over the years, discovering the rest of Sabbath's catalog as well as history, and
hmm
not realizing, oh wait, Ozzy Osbourne was the singer of Black Sabbath? And the rest is history. Ricky?
For me, actually, was when I discovered Ozzy. Because at one point in my early metal years, I got so heavily into Ozzy, of course, with Blizzard of Oz, Dario Madman, uh, everything. And of course, I discovered that he was in another band called Black Sabbath. I was like, yeah, let me check it out. And, it was heavy, doomy, slow. And it wasn't 2 years later that I realized that Black Sabbath was the most influential metal band of all time. The first metal band. But after that, I went in balls deep into discography, and I there's some albums I love to death. There's some albums that I enjoy once in a while, and then there's others that I'm like, why did this had to be an album?
And we're gonna get to those
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah. So no honorable mentions because like I said, we're gonna go through every single album in the discography, and I mean
Every one of them.
everything.
All
So yeah.
20. All 20.
Well, technically there's 19, but we'll get to the 21 when we get there. So yeah.
Yes. So, let's start the history of the band. So, going back to the mid 1960s, guitarist Tony Iommi was at the time an amateur guitarist on the verge of becoming professional.
Mm-hmm.
And because Birmingham, England, steel factories, steel mills, and all this stuff, and you had to work your ass off to make some
Mm-hmm.
kind of money before you could do anything else. And ironically, it was his final day of working there before he was
Mm-hmm.
going to move on to playing music, and
Mm-hmm.
he puts a piece of sheet metal into the pressing, and the machine comes down, snap, and took the complete tip of his middle finger and part of the tip of his ring finger
Mm-hmm.
off of his fretting hand. And you would think to yourself, well, man, a guitarist with no fingertips like that, his career is over. Nope.
Especially left-handed. At the time, there
Yes.
was not many left-handed guitarists, so it was a rarity that. At the same time, Tony Iommi having the worst of luck and his last day of work becoming a full-time musician. That will be the genesis of the first Sabbath album.
Yeah, because, yeah, you would think after that happened, his career would be over. Nope, he basically took plastic bottles, melted them down, and liquid soap, and would sand it all down to fit like fingertips. And he
Mm-hmm.
would start playing with thicker strings, so that way it's easier to play, and started
Yeah.
using power chords as well. And lo and behold, he would create a sound that nobody had ever heard before. Like
The diminished fifth. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin didn't even scratch the surface of that
Nope.
sound.
Not even Deep Purple, which I'm guessing
Deep Purple didn't. Well, this was during when Deep Purple was more of psychedelic band.
Yeah,
Quite
yeah.
what they would eventually be.
Mm-hmm.
But now we get to the formation of the band. So first, it started off with Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward playing together in the Polka Tulk Blues Band or Blues Company, and then would eventually search around for a singer and bass player and would pick up Terence Geezer Butler on bass, and then would go around music shops in England, and they found this one ad that said, Ozzy Zeeg requires geeg. Because John Osborne, felt like, I have to stand out from everybody else, so I came up with Ozzy Zeeg. And it stood out a mile, and they already knew Ozzy, but according to Tony Iommi, he's like, this can't be the same Ozzy. I didn't think he sung.
And then they go to his house. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah. So then we get the form. Then we get those four coming together: Tony on guitar, Geezer on bass, Bill on drums, Ozzy on vocals, and would eventually become Earth, and then eventually change the name to Black Sabbath due to Geezer Butler's love of the Boris Karloff film Black Sabbath.
Yes.
So now,
so the movie Black Sabbath influenced the band Black Sabbath, which created the album Black Sabbath.
Yeah, so in
February...
It
gets complicated.
Yeah. So Friday, February 13th, 1970, we get the release of the self-titled album, Black Sabbath, which was recorded in October of 1969, and they recorded it all live in 12 hours, and then while the producer was doing the overdubs and the mixing, they would just go to the bars and get fucking wasted.
Yeah,
so
and in the
States...
And in the States, it was released on June 1st, 1970 by Warner Brothers. So, again, it was kind of like a test for us to see how this album would hit, but, you know.
Yeah. So, where'd you have this ranked, Ricky?
I had this on number 2, because it's the debut album. It's kind of like with the past 3 debut. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but you just gotta have it. It's the debut. Because, I mean, my God, the song... Black Sabbath alone makes this album. I mean, The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sheep, N.I.B. Come on, it's probably one of my favorite guitar riffs of Tony Iommi. The dun 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 dun. Follow me now. I mean, it's basically Lucifer. The story of Lucifer. What happened? Lucifer falls in love, but. I mean, it's got everything going from heavy metal. The Wizard has a bit of a harmonica sound. But yeah, I mean, it's regardless probably one of the most influential, not the most influential metal album ever. Where did you have it?
Well, where did the rest of the Horsemen gang have it ranked?
So Hannah had the debut at number 4. Arthur had it at number 2 as well, and Raphael, he had it at number 5. So we're kind of in agreement that the debut is probably top 5, no question about it, because it's the debut.
Yeah, I have this ranked at number 5, because after all, literally nothing in 1970 sounded this heavy or this evil, and going back to what I was talking about earlier, Led Zeppelin didn't even scratch the surface of how heavy you could get. Deep Purple would kind of follow suit shortly thereafter this album, kind of keeping that vibe going a little bit. But I mean, yeah, the song Black Sabbath, that's pretty much the creation of doom metal right there.
The diminished fifth.
Yep. And then, of course, The Wizard with the harmonica, and then N.I.B., one of the best. Wicked World is another great song.
Yeah, Wicked World, yeah.
Sleeping Village, The Warning, all these other cool songs. And it all works together like a great jam session. Like, all the songs are pretty much connected to each other. And given where recording was at this point, this is well produced for a live recording of the band playing together like in a jam session. sounds great for 1970 standards.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, how do you deny the awesomeness of these songs?
You
So,
can't.
yeah, it's blues and it's rock,
Yes,
but
which is a lot. Another thing.
it goes
That's
into heavy metal
yeah,
because it's the invention point of the genre.
yeah, yeah. Which again, heavy metal kind of comes from the blues mostly. I mean, guys like Robert Johnson talking about the devil. I mean, come on, that's metal as hell.
Absolutely. So now we move on. An incredible amount of time goes by. Just kidding. 4 months go by. Late
Yeah.
1970, and then they would release what is, from a sales standpoint, from a hits on the radio standpoint, their only top 20 hit up to this point. 1970s Paranoid. So, Ricky, where did you have this ranked?
I have it at number 1. The reason I have it number 1 is because this was the first Sabbath album I got into, and yeah, it's not as good as the debut, but my god, in terms of hits, I mean, you got Iron Man, Paranoid, Hand of Doom, fucking War Pigs. Probably the best song in their entire career. But I mean, if you go down the line, Electric Funerals, kind of a
Another Doom classic.
Doom psychedelic. Planet Caravan is, you know, a more relaxed, chill song,
clean guitar song, which Pantera would later cover and do it so well.
Yeah, I mean, the instrumental Rat Salad, I kind of like it.
I really like it.
Very, especially gives Bill Ward's ability as a drummer. Yeah, because Bill Ward is a blues drummer. He's not a metal drummer. He's a blues drummer. And also gave Geezer Butler, again, he's a blues guitar bassist. The
well, Geezer, let's not forget, Geezer actually started as a guitarist and had no idea how to play bass, so he would just play along to Tony's riffs for the most part.
Yeah. And Fairies Wear Boots is an okay song as well, but, you know, for me, Paranoid's my number 1. And this is the copy that I have is the 2006 version, which, you know, actually has the alternative titles of War Pig and Fairies Wear Boots, aka Luke Squall and Jack the Ripper. But, you know, again, next to the debut, it's probably up there.
Where did everybody else have this ranked?
So Archer had it at number 4. Hannah had it at number 3. And Raphael had it at number 7.
Meanwhile, I have this album at number 2. I mean, this album, this is a heavy metal classic, after all. You got 3 of the biggest hits in metal history, War Pigs, Iron Man, and Paranoid. And to think the song Paranoid was just a thrown-together track to finish out the album.
It was last-minute addition.
And look what happened. It became one of the biggest songs of all time. And also, you could kind of argue that song was almost like the birth of punk to an extent. Because of how much faster it was compared to the other tracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason why, apart from my number 1 album, the reason why it's number 2 is because, you can get tired of this album because you could turn on the radio and pretty much hear all of these songs, except for maybe Hand of Doom because heroin bad. But but yeah, all these songs are classic. Even Rat Salad, I love that instrumental because it was more of like an improvisation song where they're just playing whatever and seeing what they can do and showcasing all the musicians' abilities to play. And then Fairies Wear Boots, a great closer. Electric Funeral, one of the best Doom songs of all time.
And the album cover, kind of creepy, which originally it was supposed to be called War Pigs, the album. But last minute edition with Paranoid.
War, And on top of that, as far as album covers go, that is one of the worst album covers ever. It's like, what is that dude about to skydive with a sword?
Yeah, I mean the debut's album cover is iconic, which we forgot to mention.
Yeah, you go from one of the greatest covers of all time to one of the worst covers of all time.
I mean, trust me, it's not as bad as something.
Other ones we might touch on.
Other ones.
So, and by the way, thank you, Made in Oregon, for hopping on in here. So, yeah, you're in for a treat, and we're only 2 albums in. So now, after Paranoid, we get into 1971 with the release of Master of Reality, which is my number one. Because if somebody asked me what would be a good Black Sabbath album to describe everything that they are, this would be the album, because you got basically every phase of their career, past and future, on this album. You got your doomy songs, you got your fast songs, you got your jam sessions, and all in beautiful melodic songs. I mean, starting off with Sweet Leaf, the birth of stoner metal, and then like songs like Children of the Grave, which started the which was the birth which that song was one of the birth points of the metal chug, where you get those chuggy riffs, and also even a precursor to speed metal and thrash a little bit because of the high tempo energy it's got. Lord of this World, great song. And Into the Void, another great doom song, although you could argue the birth of sludge metal as well with that song. And this also, you had a lot of those like instrumental ditties that would go in between songs, like Embryo breaks up After Forever into Children of the Grave, Orchid, Children of the Grave to Lord of this World, and even the song Solitude, probably one of the best mellow songs. Ozzy sounds very, very sad. And up to this point, yeah, people thought Black Sabbath was a satanic band, and they may or may not have been.
Maybe.
To be debated. But After Forever is pretty much a Christian song, all about being positive in Jesus. And I'm assuming they wrote it while they were on drugs.
So most specifically, weed.
Yes, most specifically weed.
Which is a theme for certain albums, which will go on later, of a certain amount of drugs that they used. Yes. But for me, Masters of Reality lands at number 3. I mean, the originators of doom metal, sludge metal, even a bit Stoner. Of
speed.
Yeah. Speed, sludge, even a bit of thrash, and the chugs, the Vision Children. Yeah, which that you can also hear in almost every single band, even in black metal, some certain black metal bands. Like, I think one of the earliest memories, a band like Behemoth, probably in Love You the Darkest, has that chug. But my God, I mean, if you want an album, you want a recommendation of where to start in Sabbath, Masters of Reality would be probably one of the albums that you gotta recommend anybody. And
Absolutely.
in terms of
and also it needs to show to people that people need to go beyond just radio Black Sabbath and realize how great these songs are. So if you like Master of Reality, or at least know about it, we can be friends.
Yeah. So Hannah and Archer had it both at number 1. And Raphael had number 3. So again, it's kind of, you're starting to realize that the maybe first 3 albums are going to be in the top 5, because they're probably the 3 most influential albums next to later albums we're going to talk about. But you're starting to realize that the first 3 albums, no matter what, they're like up there in terms of influence, musically, lyrically. It checks all the boxes.
Yes, it does. So after 1971, we get into 1972 with the release of Volume 4. Now, the backstory with this album is that around this time, their old producer, Roger Bain, who would also go on to produce Judas Priest's first album a couple years later, started to lose interest in the band's work and wanted to try working with other bands. So Tony Iommi decided to step in to produce this album, and this is a complete opposite feel from Master of Reality. And this kind of goes back to that free form style of the first 2 albums, and as well as the production as well, kind of more radical sounding. And also, this album is legendary for the drug use going on, particularly heroin and cocaine.
Oh god, the amount of cocaine. Like I said, to this day, I'm surprised. Ozzy, my god, the amount of blow he did during that time. He's still alive, which my god.
Even Tony will admit he was the second biggest partier in the band during this period. And like, yeah, and just to go to show you, like, how crazy they were with it, they were smuggling in cocaine inside of the amps. I mean, that's brilliant, but that's also shady as fuck. Like, hey, I got my speakers. I'm gonna look at them over here. And yeah, but for me, Volume 4, it's my number 6. There are a lot of great songs on here. Like, the opening to Wheels of Confusion. It's great. Supernaut, another chuggy song. Snowblind, like, Snowblind, that's a perfect cocaine anthem. And hell, even Changes, like, going back, I used to not like Changes for a long time. But going back and understanding the story finally, with how it was revolving around Bill Ward's divorce, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And then you get even some more stuff, like a song that I'm going to assume they wrote while they were on a 2-week bender, Laguna Sunrise.
Oh,
is sexier than anything Brie Larson will ever do, because fuck Brie Larson. But then you get to the closing song, Under the Sun, arguably up to this point the heaviest song written up until that point. But the reason why it's at number 6 is because I felt the production was very inconsistent, like especially the drums. There'd be times where the cymbals would be way too loud while the snare is kind of quiet in comparison to everything else. So if Tony had gotten the production down, I think this album would have gone higher for me. But it's still a great album at number 6. But one more thing I gotta bring up is that also during this time, because of the high drug use, they decided that at one point they were staying at a house of John DuPont of DuPont Paint, and they found a bunch of gold spray paint and covered Bill Ward in gold spray paint, almost killing him because of the toxicity.
Yeah.
It's like, aha, I got you, fucker. But thank God.
Oh shit! I really
okay.
got him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
so
who else
I have
this ranked high?
I had it at number 8, a bit lower than yours, but I mean it's still a great album. But this was a kind of a transition period because fans already got accustomed to the heaviness of the 3 albums priorly, and when they got into this, it kind of felt a bit different. I mean, it's still heavy, but when you have a song that changes, which I like that song, but at the time, they were like, oh, they're kind of selling out because they have a ballad. They're not supposed to have ballads, which, you know what? Fuck you. A band can't be brutal
they had a ballad on Master of Reality, for fuck's sake.
I mean, come on. We're all humans. We all have feelings. Just because we're meta, so it doesn't mean we don't want to be loved. But my God, it's still a great song. Snowblind, my God, a cocaine anthem. Yeah, just to show you how much the boys were doing a lot of zombie dust. But I have it low because really it's not one of my favorites. I do go at it once in a while, but if I really want to go to a really good Sabbath, I always go probably to maybe Masters or Paranoid. But overall, still a great album. And the rest of the gang, let's see where they had it. So Archer had Volume 4 at number 11. Hannah had it at number 6.
Ooh, Archer's here.
Wait,
what?
Is it? No. My God!
Archer!
My God!
And I just got off work.
My God! Buddy!
See, beautiful Portugal.
My God! It's been months! My God!
I know. This time I just got a a hell of a schedule. It wasn't supposed to be.
Oh my god, Arthur. You crazy son of a bitch.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, but actually we're in volume 4. We're actually in volume 4. So like I said, you had it at number 11, Hannah had number 6, and Raphael had it at... Actually, Raphael did not had it any of those lists because he just did 7 albums. The rest he didn't care about them. So understandable. Which you're gonna see some lists that didn't want to go.
They're gonna be varied. They're gonna be varied.
Yeah,
but I kind of want to just add one thing. Sorry if the connection is going down because this is going to be a little bit networkless.
Yeah,
I mean.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. But,
wait.
He's coming back to us, folks.
He's coming back. He's coming back. Hopefully.
I'm like I said, I'm sorry. I just this is going to be a bit. I'm seeing the light now. So to say.
There you go.
I'm just going to see where's my list at.
I mean, we got it right here, anyways. But if you want to go through your list quickly, just tell us your albums, and we'll go in depth more into it. Because we're, like I said, we're in volume 4. We're barely going to the 5th album eventually, so we're gonna be here for a while.
I'm just here it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've put volume 4 in number 11. I mean, I know it's a bit low. It's the album with the infamous Snowblind track, but I mean, this was the time when Sabbath was starting to unravel. It was Ozzy with his drug issues. It was Iommi,
almost
Butler, and
Ward.
Yes. So this, I'm not saying that Volume 4 isn't a good album. It is, but I mean, we had the peaks with Master of Reality, Black Sabbath, and even Paranoid. This was when they started to unravel. Did you already talk about Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and Master?
Yes.
Then I'll just be quick about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The first Black Sabbath album, I put in number 2. I mean, a 50-year-old album with some of the most infamous tracks in the world. NIB, Black Sabbath itself, Hand of Doom. I mean, this was the beginning of heavy metal, so to say. Mm-hmm. Paranoid, I've put number 4. I mean, I've seen Razorfist's telling of the albums, and he almost commits blasphemy saying that War Pigs is overrated, and he doesn't like it. Although, Walpurgis is awesome. But then again, it's Paranoid, it's Iron Man, War Pigs. I mean, I still sometimes listen to War Pigs to this day, and I even try to do Generals gathered in their masses.
Just like witches at black masses. Levi!
Nah, he doesn't want to join. Then
Master of Reality.
Master.
It's number 1. I mean, it's number 1 for most of us, if not for all of us. I mean, this was peak Black Sabbath. Children of the Grave, Embryo, Sweet Leaf. I mean, this was the peak, or one of the many peaks of what would become Black Sabbath. And I would say that it's going to be number 1 in most cases. Number 20, everyone knows which one it is.
Yeah. We're gonna get there eventually, painfully, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
But Volume 4, I already said all of it. And this, may I start with SBS, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath?
Yes,
yes.
we're at
now moving on to Album number 5, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. So the
I put
backstory
my
with this album, is that while they needed to take a break after everything that happened during Volume 4, because it was around this time that Tony Iommi actually collapsed from exhaustion, from combination of high pace and the drug abuse. It's like, it's tiring doing cocaine 4 days in a row. So he decided that they all needed to take a break. So after taking a break, they came back to Bel Air, Los Angeles to record at a studio. And even after the break, they still couldn't write anything because Tony will admit he was having writer's block. So then they decided to rent a castle in England to record.
Epic.
Oh my god.
Yes. And that Ozzy and Tony supposedly saw a ghost in the castle.
And the infamous story of the main table covered with blow. I mean, my god.
I mean, they were creating Sabbath Bloody Sabbath or a new version of Snowblind.
Yeah.
I mean, in this album is very psychedelic. I mean, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is very out there. Sabracadabra, my god, that's a great album. That's a great song. Yeah, and I had this
Sabracadabra. I love that. I love that song so much. Even I would say Metallica did a hell of a job doing the whole cover with it.
Yeah. So I personally had this at number 7, a bit higher than Volume 4, but still a great album.
Now in a moment you're going to see me eating because I still haven't had any lunch.
Alrighty.
Sorry about that if you're going to see me eating, but like I said, this working in a restaurant, sometimes you have lunch at good hours, other times not so much.
Yeah.
But
I have Sabbath Bloody Sabbath at number 3. I felt like this album...
Really? That high?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal album because much more experimental than Volume 4. They're getting into the prog rock aspects of their sound. After all, Rick Wakeman, the keyboardist from Yes, would come in.
On
Sabotage.
That's true. I forgot he was kind of like the 5th mystery member.
The mystery 5th member of the band because, and that's funny, it was during the time they were recording. Jeff Nichols eventually would come in later, but yeah, like on here, they were trying, like Tony was trying to get this keyboard part and he couldn't get it to sound right. And they were hanging out at a bar and they met Rick Wakeman there. And Rick was talking to him like, well, what are you guys trying to do? And Tony's like, well, we're trying to play this part, but I can't get it. And then Rick comes in, you mean like this? And they're like, yes! So they're like, let's have him on the album. And it was brilliant. Of course, there are a couple of tracks that do feel weird, like Who Are You? It's a little bit odd. And then Spiral Architect, as much as that song is good, it sounds more like The Who than it does Black Sabbath, but it's still a really good song. But yeah, like the title track is one of the best songs ever. A National Acrobat, brilliant. Even Fluff, beautiful acoustic song as well. So,
and that album cover. That album cover, though.
Probably the best album cover they ever did. Holy shit. So yeah.
I still say that the first Black Sabbath album is a hell of a cover.
So Hannah had Sabbath Bloody Sabbath at let me go back to the list. She had it at number 5, believe it or not. And Raphael, he had it at number 6.
So Arthur.
Yeah.
Yeah, where'd you have Sabbath Bloody Sabbath ranked?
Number 13. That's okay. I had the number 13, and it's lower that I really wanted to put here. But then again, especially with the rest of the competition, there are some albums that I really should have had them higher. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is one of them. But then again, as you said, this was a time when Iommi got a writer's block, but then he came up with some of the best riffs. I mean, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, that all.
Sabbath, Sabbath, bloody Sabbath. And my God, I mean, Ozzy's vocals
and
were haunting.
Sabracadabra.
Mm-hmm.
And Sabracadabra, I mean, just. I mean,
Yep.
if anyone still says to this day that blues is not a part of heavy metal, get yourself into an asylum. That's just great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, moving on out of Sabotage Sabbath, 2 years would go by before we would get Sabotage. Now, the reason behind the album name was because the year before, Sabbath started a big beef with their past management. They were accusing them of stealing checks and fucking them over, while their management accused them of breach of contract. So they were getting plagued with lawyers by this point, and it was... And that anger, there was a lot of high tension going on, mixed with the drug use, and it created Sabotage, which, Ricky, where'd you have this ranked?
I have this actually at number 5. Now,
number 7 for me.
I have it really high because, for one, thanks to Professor Popoff, got me into this album. Before that, I didn't get into Sabotage, but after listening to it, it's so good. Hole in the Sky, Symptom of the Universe, probably one of the starters of progressive
of thrash in Prague.
Yeah, Megalomania.
Some would say that this is the most heavy metal album of Sabbath's career.
Yeah,
I mean, Symptom of the Universe.
Yep.
I mean, and I got into Symptom of the Universe by, of all things, Brutal Legend. They had Symptom of the Universe on the soundtrack, and imagine being the Jack Black's character on that big ass car and putting on Symptom of the Universe.
Yeah. The only complaint I have on Sabotage is the album cover. And I like
because it's like Ozzy wearing a kimono and the size of the bulge in Bill Ward's pants.
Yeah, because again, the amount of drug use that they were using at this time.
It's like the size of this bottle, and my fist is the ball sack.
I mean, it's
the freaking 70s.
I mean, it's iconic in not the way that we think it is, but then again, if you see it on the shelf, musically,
it sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a great album, probably, and I think I had this one when we did the progressive metal albums in I want to say number 8 or number 7, because it kind of helped the way for progressive metal. So yeah, it's a great album. Again, go beyond the album cover and you'll love it.
Although I'll still say that this is probably Sabbath's most metal album of them all, while the others are still more doomy, more progressive, more jazzier, depending. I think that for the godfathers of heavy metal, Sabotage is their most metal.
Yeah. And where did you had this one, Archer? I forgot.
7. I had at number 7.
So Hannah had Sabotage at number 8. And Raphael had it. Nope, he didn't have it on his list.
Oh man, I mean, Sabotage. If you want to talk about the Ozzy era, you have to talk about all those 5 albums.
Yes.
I mean, Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy are considered forgotten.
We're gonna get to those. We'll get to those.
No, I know. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. But if we want to talk about the whole Ozzy era, you have to include Sabotage.
Where did you have it, Levi?
I also had this at number 7. Yeah, I just love how... Yeah, they were always heavy, but this album had more aggression to it, and it was because of just the situation with the band going on at the time, and even the closing song to Rit, one of the only songs Ozzy actually wrote lyrics for, and they were really good, talking about how seemed like they couldn't get shit done because they had lawyers in the studio all the time, and even that classic line, "Are you Satan? Are you men? You've changed a lot since we began." Great song. Although, and the one song off this album that divides a lot of people is "Am I Going Insane?" It's catchy. It's fun. It's a catchy song, but yeah, maybe not for like a Black Sabbath vibe, but still a good song.
Sidetrack plot for Black Sabbath. I told you that I got the first 3 Black Sabbath albums when I went on my tour. I still don't know why Wicked World is not on the first Black Sabbath album.
I think because
Wicked World, do,
some versions do. I think the American version,
the version I got doesn't have Wicked World. If we were to do top 10 Black Sabbath songs per se, future reference maybe, Wicked World I would put him right on my top 10.
We already did it, remember? Long time ago.
That was a early episode too.
Well, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
So now, moving on, after Sabotage, a year later, we get into 1976, and they release a really unusual album, Technical Ecstasy.
Yeah!
Because this album, aside from maybe 2 songs, doesn't sound like Black Sabbath to me. I actually have this.
It sounds like Genesis.
Yeah.
Why don't you show people the album cover just to see?
I actually don't have it. I don't have that album. 2 robots fucking. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have Technical Ecstasy at number 17 overall. Because, really, like I said, there were only maybe 2 songs on this album that sounded like Black Sabbath. But the one that stands out is the song Dirty Women, which, that's a great song. It's just on the wrong album. This song should have been on, like, Paranoid or Volume 4, and it would have fit better on those albums.
Yeah.
Not on this
album. I would say more on Volume 4. Or maybe on Sabotage as well. I mean, Dirty Woman, maybe a reference to...
Yeah, because the funny story with Dirty Women was literally they wrote the song after Geezer Butler was walking around Miami once and went, "Huh, look at all these whores. Let's write a song about them." Dirty Women. But you can tell on this album they were just struggling.
Even Peter Taggarton, with his band Pain, he made a cover of Dirty Woman.
But during this album, you can just tell they were just struggling to try and find a sound. Like, Rock and Roll Doctor, some of the dumbest lyrics ever. The song gets catchy, but it feels more like a Lynyrd Skynyrd song than it does Black Sabbath.
It's a bit like, spoiler alert, Johnny Blade on Never Say Die.
A little bit.
A little bit.
But yeah, this started one of the dark periods of the band right here. So yeah, Technical Ecstasy, my number 17, bit of a turd.
I got on number 19.
I have it at number 16 because the only song that I go back to listen to the album is Dirty Woman. I mean, I will put this album once in a blue moon whenever I want to listen to not the usual Sabbath albums.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's an okay album, but it's not really an album that I'm like, I gotta listen to it right now. I mean, eventually I might get it on CD eventually. But, you know, Dirty Woman's the only song to me that stands out.
And also the song It's Alright on this album, which Bill Ward sings. And it turns out he's a really good singer. But the song doesn't belong on a Black Sabbath album.
Nope.
Nope, it doesn't.
Or as our good friend Matt Hardy would say, delete.
Yes. So Hannah and Raphael didn't put them on the list. For good reasons.
And also something that some people
don't
might forget.
Don't care about the album.
Some people might forget about this, but also during this time, more tension was starting to rise with the band, and Ozzy ended up leaving briefly. And
For a
they
while.
picked up Dave Walker from Savoy Brown to do vocals for the shows.
But I think that the Dave Walker experiment wasn't with Technical Ecstasy. It was with the next album, Never Say Die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which then gets us 2 years later, 1978, and the drug and alcohol abuse finally reach a point after all this time. They had been keeping up the charade, and we get to this point with Never Say Die in 1978. This is my number 18, a bigger stinker than Technical Ecstasy, and the worst album they ever did with Ozzy. Not the worst album in all of Sabbath, but the worst that they had with Ozzy, and really the only song... The title track, it feels more like a Thin Lizzy song, but it's a banger.
Yeah, I had this even lower. I had this on number 19. Again, probably the worst Sabbath in the Ozzy era. Never Say Die is the only song that I give a damn about. Johnny Blade, not so much. The album cover,
okay.
The album cover kind of looks cool, not gonna lie. The album cover is okay-ish.
I am not a fan of that cover.
I mean,
and that was actually supposed to have been a rainbow cover as well.
I mean, it's been used in a lot of t-shirts, so I mean, it's kind of influenced a bit. But you know what? It's almost at the bottom, number 19 for me.
For me, it's number 18. I mean, I still like to listen to Johnny Blade every now and then. I still like to listen to that song quite a while. It's quite good, but but it doesn't leave the stench so to say of it, because Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy were the periods where eventually Black Sabbath would somewhat implode. And may I continue with the next part of the story, the early 80s?
Yes.
Wait, actually, after this, Sabbath never released an album until Ozzy came back in the 2000s. Goodbye. We still have
a bunch left to talk about.
We still got a bunch of left. I wonder why they're not talked about. I wonder why.
We'll get there.
But now we come to the early 80s. I would say the 80, 81, I think. And all the tensions with Black Sabbath were coming to a head. Ozzy eventually left, was kicked out by eventually Bill Ward, who was the
was fired by Tony Iommi through Bill Ward. So kind of a bitch move on Tony's part, like, yeah, cantaloupe cock.
and still Ozzy in many interviews says that Bill Ward was his best friend in the entire band. But I'm sorry to say, Ozzy, if that is true, why you keep calling him fat? And why did you add Tommy Kafalis on the end tour and not ask Bill Ward to come back, especially for certain shows? But I digress. Ozzy was out, eventually picking up Bob Daisley, Lee Kersley, and a little, I would say, genius by the name of Randy fucking Rhoads to be a part of Ozzy Osbourne. And the rest, as they say, is history. But Black Sabbath eventually would not be still. So who would they pick up? The most magical, knightly, and imaginative midget. I'm sorry, he was a bit of a shortstop, but the most gentleman, magician, and all-around knight, the king of power metal, Ronnie James Dio. And out came what is considered one of the best, you could say, comeback albums of all. Heaven and Hell, Children of the Sea, Neon Knights, Heaven and Hell itself. There's classic after classic after classic.
Yes.
And this was also the time where Bill Ward would eventually leave the band, and in came Ronnie James Dio's drummer, a guy by the name of Vinny Appice. And this was magic waiting to happen. Ronnie James Dio always had the God-given ability to sing his songs and let imagination create all the pictures. I mean, heaven and hell, sing me a song, you're a singer. Do me no wrong, you're a bringer of evil. So what are you? A priest, sort of say priest, or a bard?
Mm-hmm.
He leaves everything to imagination.
Yes. And
And
where did you have this?
Number 3. I put Heaven and Hell at number 3. To me,
Mm-hmm.
the best of the Dio incarnation.
Yes.
Although the next album, which we'll talk about in a moment, I've put him very much higher.
Yes.
But in a way, I already mentioned most of my top 5.
Yeah.
Number 1, Master of Reality. Number 2, Black Sabbath. Heaven and Hell at number 3, and number 4 at Paranoid. And number 5 is going to shock a little bit of people.
So I had Heaven and Hell at number 4 for the same reasons Arthur has already mentioned. I mean, my God, Heaven and Hell, sing me a song. You're a singer.
And I'm sorry, Levi. That I know that this is your show, but this part of Heaven and Hell and talking about Ronnie James Dio
I know.
Is one of my favorite vocalists of all time.
Yeah. But so Children of the Sea, Neon Nights, mwah. Even like Wishing Well, Die Young, Lonely in the World, they're still great fucking hits.
Yeah.
And
it's ironic how Dio got in the band. Sharon Arden was the one who introduced Tony Iommi to Dio.
Sharon Osbourne.
Yep.
Yeah, Sharon Arden at the time.
Yep. But I also had this at number 4. I mean, in terms of the Dio era, nothing really topped this album to me personally, because it's like, wow, just the magic. And also, a lot different songwriting compared to before, because before, Ozzy would always sing along with the riffs for the most part, where here, Dio would kind of let the guitar do his thing while he would craft his own phrasing, which added a new element to the music. And I know a certain someone from the Thralls of Metal who would be in the chat. If he was in the chat, he'd be saying that this is not Black Sabbath. Which,
oh boy, let's not get started. Let's not get started with that.
All I'll say is, it's different from Ozzy, but still, it's still magical nonetheless.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So Raphael,
let's put one thing perfectly clear. Black Sabbath has always been all parts, but it's not Ozzy, it's not Dio, it's not Tony Martin, Glenn Hughes, or whatever. There are only 2 men and Geezer Butler.
Yeah.
I mean, those 2 to me are what Black Sabbath is. I mean, Ozzy was the first singer. Cool. Dio was a great replacement. Tony Martin was also a great replacement as well. But who were the ones that stuck through thick and thin? Geezer, most of the time,
for the most part.
Tom, for most part, and Tony Iommi,
Tony
all
through it all, yeah.
Yeah.
But where did Hannah and Raphael have this ranked, if they even have it ranked?
Raphael had it at number 1. And Hannah had it at number 2. So again, different era of Black Sabbath kind of revitalized the band to a bigger audience, because this was the 80s. We had the new over British heavy metal.
The Wabam going
barely
now.
Cop and going. So this album, even though it's not really part of New Album, it felt like it was part of New Album.
It fits the bill. It fits the bill.
Yeah.
Also, this was during a time when, because of Nawabam blowing up, that the old guard was making some of their best albums in a while, like Sabbath.
Like
Priest, Whitesnake.
Judas Priest, British Steel. One example.
At the same time. Yeah. So now moving into 1981, Billboard out, Vinny Appice in. And what's cool with Vinny is that because not only is he the brother of legendary drummer Carmine Appice, but he was a big Bill Ward fan, so he pretty much took what Bill did, but added his own flair to it, and we get the Mob Rules. Now, for me, Mob Rules fell to number 10, for me personally. Not that many songs stood out, but it's an awesome album. Like Sign of the Southern Cross, the title track. Those are two great songs. And even Turn Up the Night, which sounds like a sequel to Neon Nights. But the reason why it fell for me is because it doesn't quite stand out as Heaven and Hell did for me. So that's why it's my number.
I mean, to me, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I put Mob Rules at number 6. I mean, I've grown a more appreciation of the Dio incarnation of Black Sabbath. Although Dehumanizer I wanted to put higher, but I couldn't. But still, Mob Rules. Here's the thing: I knew of a song. I knew of the song Mob Rules that existed, and oh my god, I wonder if Ronnie James Dio was a prophet, so to say. If you listen to Fools, the Mob Rules.
Yeah.
I mean, he is describing, I'm sorry to say, America today. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But then again, sorry, ambulance coming about now. But here's the thing. Mob Rules, the story of Mob Rules, and especially when they went to record at John Lennon's house, the story was mind-blowing, so to say. But Mob Rules is a bit of a continuation of Heaven and Hell. Not good, not as good as, I won't say not as good, but not as epic or as great as Heaven and Hell. But it's a great sequel. I mean, there are sequels that get a lot better, but Mob Rules just needs to continue the story.
Yeah, I had it at number 6 as well. Again, so everything Archer said, it's kind of a continuation of Heaven and Hell. A bit, not as much memorable songs as Heaven and Hell had, but still packs a punch. I mean, the title track, the Mob Rules, which, let's not forget, first Mob Rules was in the movie Heavy Metal, the first recording of the song. Not to mention that.
And here's another thing. If you grew up with a Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, as we call it here in Europe, during the 80s or the 90s, and if you played Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage, there is a MIDI track of Mob Rules in it.
Yeah. Voodoo is another one songs that I go up, Turn Up the Night, and then the rest they're okay, but again, not as memorable, unfortunately, as Heaven and Hell, but it's still a great album. That's why I have it at number 6.
And
now moving on. So a year later, they recorded the live album Live Evil, and this started the dissension within the band, but mainly between Dio and Tony, because they kept going behind each other's backs, remixing the album, and that's what eventually. Although
I do believe that the producer was a bit of an asshole, starting those rumors as well. So.
But eventually, Dio would leave, and then walks in. So Dio and Vinny would leave. Bill Ward would come back to do the studio drums for the next album, and would pick up Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. And in 1983, we get Born Again. Now, to me, Born Again, this is not really Black Sabbath to me, because you look at a lot of the songs. You look at a lot of the songs on here, and. Yeah, the production was very bad. Even for 1983 standards, this was pretty rough. But there are a few songs on this album that are good, like Disturbing the Priest, Zero to Hero, and like the funny thing, and the title track, and the funny thing with Disturbing the Priest, it was all about them disturbing the church next door where they were recording and actually going out for beers with them afterwards. But Ian,
let's not
during
forget
this time,
and let's not forget another song, Stonehenge.
But even songs on here like Digital Bitch to me sounds like a bastardized version of Highway Star, and it does not fit at all for me. But then, because Ian, it's like they were going nuts, and Ian tried to destroy a bunch of shit. Like, the song Trashed, the opening track is literally about Ian getting blind drunk at a bar, going back to the mansion they were recording at, taking Bill Ward's car and racing it around a go-kart track and wrecking it in a fiery wreck and walk away unscathed and be like, sorry about your car. And wrote a song about it.
I wonder if I can put in a Destruction Derby. Ozzy Osbourne, Ian Gillan, Yngwie Malmsteen, and who was another guy that always thrashed cars? Oh yeah,
Vince Neil.
Joe Elliott from Def Leppard.
Vince Neil from Motley Crue would win it all. But this album, it cost the band so much money to make that they may have bankrupted the label at this point. It was a disaster. And then again, it wasn't totally their fault because.
But you're forgetting one thing. This was I do saw a bit of the story that Razorfist told on his Metal Mythos, and it was true. Sharon got with Ozzy, eventually became her manager, and this was a bit of a revenge on her daughter and new son-in-law. This wasn't supposed to be a Black Sabbath song, a Black Sabbath album. I'm sorry. This was Don Arden trying to get back at Sharon and Ozzy, and eventually it failed because when Born Again was released, what was released by Ozzy? Blizzard of Oz. That says everything.
Yeah. I have.
But hang on. But to finish up though, and like this album, it's so goofy, and the fucking Devil Baby cover. That's maybe the worst album cover they ever put out. And there's even moments that influenced the Spinal Tap movie, like that scene with the Devil Baby on stage. That's courtesy of this album. Oh boy. But yeah, there are a few, like I said, there are a few good songs on here, but again, this album, this is not Black Sabbath.
No.
But here's the thing. How can but then again, we know that Black Sabbath riffs have been ripped off and reinterpreted by every band from Iron Maiden to Slayer and even to Death, possibly. But even the Beast Boys, when they did "You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party," they were taking the riff of Hotline, and they made it into their hits, into one of their hits. I mean, if this album can even be reinterpreted, the main riff, into other things, I mean, you can talk about influence, but that's all. You can imagine how much what happened.
But where did you have this ranked, Arthur?
Number 15. I have it at
number 15. I had it at number 15 as well.
I have it at number 17 because on paper, Ian Gillan with Black Sabbath sounded like a good idea. The execution, on the other hand, not the best.
Yeah.
And again, the album cover, probably one of the ugliest. I mean, a devil-eyed baby sounds cool, but no wonder they're not. No wonder there's a reason they're not remastering this album.
Because you can't save this.
You can't save this.
And it's not. The production's not entirely their fault because they did blow some speakers, and then they didn't know it until they heard the final masters, and they were like, "What the hell is this?"
And don't forget one thing. In terms of Sharon, in terms of Sharon Osbourne, and she has been guilty of doing such thing. Black Sabbath after Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die doesn't exist. So this album, for Sharon's sake, never exists. Just like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules.
Yes. But moving on.
So moving on now, you're thinking to yourself, after Born Again, I know a lot of people have different opinions, but for me, thinking after Born Again, this can't get worse. But pump the fucking brakes, because it just got worse. So here we go, 1986.
First
so
off,
big.
Pause. How about a burger?
Oh, that looks good.
Come to Portugal and you get a burger.
So moving in, so by the point the mid-'80s roll around, and pretty much all of Sabbath is gone except for Tony, and for this next album, he would recruit Glenn Hughes, formerly of Deep Purple, bassist and vocalist, great singer, great bass player, and this was around the time when Jeff Nichols, who was already kind of in the band, starting with Heaven.
Hey guys, Hey guys, I'm going to turn off the camera. But I don't want to see. I don't want to make you see me eat. So I'm going to turn off the camera, but the mic is still on.
Of course.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Yeah, we get Jeff Nichols becomes pretty much a full-time member by this point, and would pick up Eric Singer, who would eventually go on to drum for Kiss. Now we get Seventh Star in 1986. Yeah. And then that's Eric Carr.
That's Eric Carr. No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but I think Eric Singer also went to, if I'm not mistaken, Sabotage.
He's still in Kiss. So.
Yeah, but
Seventh Star. Now this album, this wasn't even meant to be a Sabbath album. It was meant to be an Iommi solo album, but the label didn't think it would sell as an Iommi solo album, so they forced him to do it as Black Sabbath. And that's the reason why this album absolutely fails for me. This is my number 19, second to last by one, because this doesn't sound like it would fit on Black Sabbath. I mean, Hard Like a Wheel is an alright song, and Danger Zone starts off sweet, but it's not Kenny Loggins. But yeah, the biggest problem I have with this album is that, yeah, this may have seemed like it was supposed to have been an Iommi solo album, but this didn't even feel like a vehicle for Tony Iommi. It felt more like a vehicle for Glenn Hughes, and that's fucked up, because literally, Tony, the only guy who is in Black Sabbath, and yet he's like the least prominent thing on this album for the most part. Like, the guitars sound super duper thin on this album, and this is like all the wrong kinds of the 80s. This is like Foreigner meets cheesy 80s music, and it just
I'm gonna start an hashtag. Hashtag Glenn Hughes doesn't remember the 80s.
He doesn't. Yeah. I mean, oh my god, the amount of blow he did. I mean, my god.
Yeah. And as he even says, how did he survive?
Yeah,
but yeah, this album, it's just, this album's not good at all for me. And and that's not a knock on Glenn Hughes, amazing singer and bass player, but if you want to hear Glenn Hughes and Tony Iommi, listen to the Iommi album Fuse, because that's great. This bad.
Yeah. I have this at number 13 because, I mean, No Stranger to Love kind of, I mean, it's a ballad.
That song is so cheesy.
It is cheesy, but, I mean, in terms of ballads, Eskish, it's a good song, but, you know, let's not forget that this was around the time that Tony Iommi and Lita were married, and they had some trouble in their marriage. So, you know, kind of, Iommi was kind of in that kind of limbo-esque area. I mean, and again,
I want to know the secret. I want to know the secret how Tony Iommi got hooked up with Lita Ford.
I know, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
he's
nothing
like
against
10 years older than she is.
But nothing against Glenn Hughes, great singer, but this was not supposed to be a Sabbath album, but they had to because the record label was afraid this album wasn't gonna sell. They could have just let Iommi release this album as an Annoy as a project, but no, they had to put the Black Sabbath name on it because it wouldn't sell, and it didn't sell.
Yeah, I feel like if this album wasn't called Black Sabbath, it would have had a better chance to succeed.
And for some weird reason, this album was in the top 100 charts at number 78, which baffles my mind. I mean, but then again, it was at 1986. This was during the time, my God, Defenders of the Faith came out, and it went up. But
all right,
I mean, Defenders is Defenders.
Yeah. Where'd you have this, Archer?
Where'd you have this one?
I have it number 17. I have at number 17. I mean, yeah. Although I kind of get a good appreciation for for the 7-star. But then again, let's not talk about just Glenn Hughes. I mean, throughout the sessions, you had Jeff Van Holt, you had Ray Gillen, you had such a huge project. And I agree completely. If this was released just as a Iomi project, it would be great. But as part of Black Sabbath's discography, very, very questionable. And but there are still some songs that I like. Even the 7-star itself, I like it very much. Go ahead.
So now, after the shitfest that was 7-star, we get into another transitionary period. Glenn Hughes, and I forgot to mention the bass player, was Dave Spitz, the brother of Dan Spitz from Anthrax, believe it or not, would leave the band, and then in comes Bob Daisley, formerly of Ozzy, to come in on bass. And they initially recruited Ray Gillen to be the singer, but then he would wind up losing the spot to Tony Martin, while Ray Gillen would form Badlands with Jakey Lee. And together, Martin, Iommi, Nichols, Daisley, and Eric Singer, 1987 would release The Eternal Idol. Now, Eternal Idol is
a bit better.
It's a bit better, not by much. This is actually my number 14 album. There are quite a few songs I really, really like on here. The Shining, especially Ancient Warrior, I love that song. And even the title track, that's the most Black Sabbath sounding song on the album, is the title track, Eternal Idol. It kind of gives off like a mixture of the Dio era and the Ozzy era a little bit in terms of the songwriting. Very doomy, very evil. And then, like, The Shining, like, a wonderful, like, jammy tune, and Ancient Warrior, nice kind of epic song, and even Hard Life to Love, kind of a speed metal song. But then you get tracks on here that, again, like Glory Ride, it sounds like an 80s boxing movie montage song, and it does not fit. Born to Lose, fast pace, meh. Scarlet Pimpernel, a pointless acoustic instrumental. Nightmare, that's an okay song, and that was on Nightmare of Elm Street 3, but it's no Dream Warriors.
No Dream Warriors, indeed.
And then Lost Forever, nice, solid, like, bluesy song, but yeah, this album is just kind of like a tale of, like, half the album's good, half the album's meh to bad, so that's why it's my number 14.
I had this at number 15. The only saving grace of this album is The Shining, Ancient Warriors, and even the title track. The rest is give or take, depending on the day that I'm in the mood in, but, you know, it's a bit better than Eternal Idol, a bit better than 7-star, a bit better than Born Again, so, you know, they're progressing a bit. Not a lot, but little by little.
Yeah. Arthur?
You're not going to like what I'm about to say, but I have it at number 8. I mean, The Eternal Light is not something that goes to you immediately. It's something that takes very much a while to listen. I agree with you 100%. There are some things that are good, some things that are bad. But I've kind of grown an appreciation for the Tony Martin era. After hearing so much on how Tony Martin allegedly destroyed Black Sabbath, which will then get to my number 5 album. I mean, Tony Martin replacing two icons like Ozzy and Dio. That's a very difficult. Comports himself admirably in all aspects. But The Eternal Idol, I put it at number 8 because I mean it's a bit of a more of a. It appreciates the more you listen, but nothing compared to what comes about next.
And speaking of what comes next, so with this album, eventually Warner Brothers actually dropped Sabbath from their label, and eventually was signed to IRS Records, which was most known for releasing albums from Nuclear Assault and a bunch of like New York thrash bands. So kind of an odd fit, but a smaller label and they can do whatever they want now. And 1989, we get another lineup change. The Tonys stick around, Jeff Nichols sticks around, but we get Bob Caudle, I believe, on bass, and then eventually Neil Murray would come in, and then would pick up Cozy Powell from Rainbow to be on drums. And in 1989,
I will say this with all of my heart, and as a drummer or former drummer, as I would say, there's no better rock or heavy metal drummer than Cozy freaking Powell. Godspeed, Cozy. You are definitely one of the best drummers of all time.
And together, this lineup would release in 1989 the Headless Cross. Now, Headless Cross, massive improvement over Eternal Idol. Really vast improvement over everything after Mob Rules. And this album, to me, it's number 11. I really, really like this album. Again, a couple of songs kind of fit in the like almost 80s montage vibe, like Kill in the Spirit World and Call of the Wild, but they're better, they're more well done than songs like Glory Ride or Born to Lose on Eternal Idol. They actually sound a lot better. But songs like the title track, Devil and Daughter, I really, really like Devil and Daughter. When Death Calls, featuring Brian May of Queen doing a guitar solo, since he and Tony Iommi are best friends. And then songs like Black Moon and Nightwing, really good closures for this album. So while a couple of the songs, mainly in the middle, still kind of have a bit of that 80s montage sound, overall this album's a lot more doom-laden than anything we've heard in a while. Kind of almost close to something you would hear in like Candlemass around this time, is what I got off of it. So,
which eventually Tony Martin became a session singer for... Candlemass itself.
In the mid-2000s. So the only reason why it's not higher is because most of the Ozzy era and Dio era are king to me, but Headless Cross, fantastic album.
I had this at number 11 as well. A bit more improvement than the Eternal Idol and Seven Star and Born Again. More memorable songs. I mean, the video for Headless Cross was in MTV heavy rotation. Black Moon, again, I'm gonna remake of the original in the Eternal Idol. The bonus track Cloak and Dagger, kind of a nudge to the marbled Cloak and Dagger. The Gates of Hell, the instrumental start of the album. I think it's kind of a weird but yet ambience song. Brian May appeared in this album when Dead Calls. I mean, but again, a better improvement.
Arthur?
Headless Cross, as you all said, it's a massive improvement of the Tony Martin era. And getting Cozy Powell on board, that is just a hell of a coup. And because of that, I have at number 5. Headless Cross to me is the best of the Tony Martin era. It's more doomy. It's more doomy. It's more dark. The album is more dark, and all the songs that you said. But you forget one thing: Headless Cross itself, the title track. I mean, that old riff.
And also forgot that the bass line during that song is very reminiscent to the bass on Heaven and Hell.
I mean, so you can the Headless Cross album. Yes, it is a complete improvement of what the Eternal Idol was, but then again, it is the best of the Tony Martin era, and there's nothing more that needs to be said. Devil and Daughter, Cloak and Dagger, Headless Cross itself, When Death Calls. It's just a great album. I
Mhm.
could easily put it up against any Ozra or even Dio era album, and I do.
Mhm.
Moving in a year later into 1990, and Black Sabbath would release I think everybody could agree their most adventurous, unique album of their
Mhm.
entire history, 1990 with Tear, which divides itself into
Yep.
like three different themes. Like the first few tracks, more along the lines of Jewish and Christianity lyrics, then it gets into the Norse mythology stuff, and then ending off with a couple other things. So, but they said that this is not a concept album. They just kind of use those as themes throughout.
Mhm.
Now, I have this at number 12. I think this is a great follow up to Headless Cross. However, the only
Mhm.
reason why it's not above, the song Feels Good to Me should not have been included on this album. It's like. That song is so cheesy. I can't. More cheesy
Mhm.
than No Stranger to Love. I'll even say, especially how it starts with the keyboards and the guitars. It sounds like a stripper's dance song.
Mhm.
I don't want to hear that on a Black Sabbath song. But I mean, Anno
Mhm.
Mundi starting off with a riff similar to Children of the Sea, and then I almost think, is Freddie Mercury singing, because we get like Queen-esque high vocals while Tony's normal vocals come through, and then it comes right through. Um,
Uh,
let's see, what was the song that happened after that? I forget. Was it Jerusalem
After
or
what?
after Anno Mundi? Track
say
number
what
two.
I
say
think
what
it
you will.
was.
Say what you will. Jerusalem is a kick-ass track.
Yeah. The Sabbath Stones was one of the standouts. I also love that combination of Odin's Chord into Valhalla and Heaven in Black, especially that drum intro on Heaven in Black.
Mhm.
Wow. So, yeah.
I mean, heaven
The
in
Battle
terms
of
of.
Tyr, really cool, like
I
Viking
mean,
keyboard instrumental.
Mhm.
if you want to talk about songs with Heaven in Black, to me, there's not a better song than Heaven Sung in Black by Wasp.
Yeah. So Hannah had this at number 9. I mean, it's kind of fitting. She likes more of the Viking style of
Yeah.
metal, so it was kind of fitting for her. I had this also at number 12. A great follow up to Headless Cross. You know,
Then I,
I like
then I
I
guess
like.
then we guess that we're all the same mindset. It's my number 12 also.
But it's a great album, man. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten a remastered edition of the album, which it's
There's
a hidden
rumors that
gem.
they're getting ready to
Yeah,
do reissues of the Tony
I
Martin
mean, I
stuff.
mean, it's a hidden gem in terms of the Sabbath discography because it's so unique and different that it. And this was during the time that Viking metal was barely into existence. I mean, at this time we
Bathory.
had Bassery released both Bloodfire Death and Hammerheart, and also Twilight of the Gods. Twilight of the Gods. So
Could this be
this.
could this be considered the most power metal of
Yes.
Black Sabbath releases?
Yes, yes, yes.
Because
Also
it feels
power
more
metal.
epic rather than doomy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
I also have at number 12, and nothing more needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
So now we fast forward 2 years later to 1992, and this is an excellent year for any Black Sabbath fan. So Cozy Powell leaves because he busted his pelvis, so he had to back out of the band for a bit. Tony Martin would leave, Neil Murray would leave, Vinny Appice would come back. Also, Geezer Butler comes back, and also Ronnie James Dio comes back. And we get in 1992 Dehumanizer, which I have this at number 8 because, especially as of late, I've been jamming this album almost nonstop since I first heard it. It's like all these songs: Computer God, After All the Dead, TV Crimes with that galloping
I
D beat.
I
Letters from the Earth. My favorite, Too Late. Maybe one of my top 3 favorite Dio era songs is Too Late. Yeah, I is great. Sins of the Father, Time Machine, which was on Wayne's World 1, and even Buried Alive. All these songs just fucking kick ass. And there's also a lot less keyboards on this album compared to the last couple, because Jeff Nichols wasn't really prominent on this album. And I'll even go out on a limb and say that this is possibly the heaviest Sabbath album. Not as good, but heavier, because Tony's guitar tone, super fucking crunchy, and it's got real meat behind it. And, like, holy shit, I fucking love this album to death. My second favorite Dio era album at number 8. Ricky?
I had this at number 14. I mean, another great follow-up between. I mean, come on, from Tear, Headless Cross, Dehumanizer, great follow-up album. So by this time,
I'm getting an option.
So by this time, Sabbath was kind of getting more a rebirth in a way. But again, this album, and Dio's back in the band, great songs. Even though I have it lower on my list because there's some others that I like a bit better. I mean, it doesn't. It still has a big punch. I mean, Time Machine, TV Crimes, Computer God, Master of Insanity. Phenomenal album.
Master of Insanity.
And I think this album did get a remastered, if I remember correctly. I got it,
the 2-disc deluxe edition. Yep.
Yeah, so, it gets to show that even though, Sharon, you ignore this, those albums sold like a bitch. Give the fans what they want. Give the fans what they want. Give us a remastered of the albums that actually sold. You can have the other ones that we're talking about later.
Not very good, yeah.
Keeping them in the closet, but give the fans the rest of the discography, which some people might say it could even be better than the Ozzy stuff by a hair.
Right. I have Humanizer at number 10. I mean, it's probably one of the strongest releases of Black Sabbath's career. As you said, Computer God, is one of my favorite tracks. TV Crimes, it can get repetitive, but I can see the appeal.
It's a goofy music video for
sure. Exactly. But Dehumanizer is a hell of an album, and to get back with Ronnie,
So, after that, the return of the glory days was short-lived. One album short-lived. So, after this, Vinny Appice and Dio would leave again. And in comes Bobby... And eventually enters Bobby Rondinelli, who played for the Scorpions for a little bit. Actually played session drums for the Love at First Sting album. Some people may not know. And Tony Martin returns, and in 1994 would release Cross Purposes. Now, Cross Purposes is my second least favorite Tony Martin album. I have it at number 16 overall. There are a couple of songs that are worth it. Songs like Cardinal Sin. My favorite, Virtual Death, because it's very much like an Alice in Chains song. The riffs and the vocal harmonies, those are good. But then the rest of this album just completely missed the mark on all fronts. And songs like Dying for Love. God, just stop singing about love. Stop it. You're Black Sabbath. The only love I want to hear is, your love for me has just got to be real, and before you know the way I'm going to feel. That's the only love we want. Not this cheesy Skinamax stuff that doesn't fit for Black Sabbath. If I want to listen to Skinamax metal, I'll listen to Typo Negative. This, no. But, yeah, Virtual Death was the standout on here. I'll listen to that song all the time. Cardinal Sin, Evil Eye with Eddie Van Halen was kind of heavy, but Eddie couldn't really save it, no matter how hard he tried. So, yeah, my second least favorite Tony Martin album. Ricky?
I had this at number 18. And again, the only saving grace was Cardinal Sin. I love that song. And, you know, a bit of an oddity because, you know, Dio left again. And, you know, Tony came back into the vocals. And, again, an oddity of an album. Just, I had to put it somewhere. I mean, the competition was really hard for this album. I'm sorry, but not the best, Tony.
Yeah, and on top of that, the biggest problem that I think we got with this album is this was a massive regression from where they were just now with Dehumanizer.
Yeah.
You go from an amazing album to this.
Yeah. From Headless Cross to Tear, Humanizer.
And then Cross Purposes down here.
Cross Purposes, but then if you thought it was going to get lower,
well, we're gonna get there. Well, where did there's Arthur.
Oh, there's Arthur.
So Arthur, where did you have Cross Purposes ranked?
Oh, I think he's barely coming in. He's barely coming in.
Wait for just a moment. Oh, there he.
Just a moment. Just a moment. Technical difficulties, everybody.
The show wouldn't be what it is without him. Arthur?
Earth to Portugal. Come in, Portugal.
Oh, man. Well, I guess while we wait for him to come on in, where did Arthur have it ranked?
So Arthur had Cross Purposes at number 16. Yeah. Which, again, it gets to show you that the competition was really that great. Oh, is he coming back? Come in, the Portuguese madman. Come in. Come to us. Join us. Join us.
Arthur. La di da di da do do. Ile ule bule. The Hyatt Covenant. The Hyatt Babylon. The Hyatt Covenant is bula. Damn you.
But
I guess we can just move on. So
yes, we'll continue.
You guys want to talk regression? Let's talk regression. So now we get into 1995.
Wait, do we actually have to say the album? Oh my God.
We have to.
Oh God.
Next up, 1995's Forbidden. Now this album should have been Foreboding because this is terrible. Number 20, clear cut, not even close. The one thing I will applaud the band for during this time is that they thought they were taking a chance, but so they tap Ernie C., the guitarist of Body Count, to be the producer because they wanted to get a modern sound, modern heaviness. And Ice-T from Body Count would come in to do vocals for the opening track, Illusion of Power. But they just completely commandeered Black Sabbath, turned it into Rap Sabbath. And this album is a fucking disgrace. This is the one album that should not ever get reissued at all. I mean, though, as far as production, the mix of this album is better than Cross Purposes. But God, the music's so bad. Like, get a grip. Ugh. There are just so many terrible songs on this album. So yeah, number 20. I have nothing other than Sabbath trying to take a chance, and I applaud Ernie C. for trying, but I have nothing else good to say about this album. It was in my top 10 worst metal albums of all time list. So there you go.
I had this on number 20 as well, and I think I lost a lot of brain cells while listening to this album, believe it or not. And just like the title says, I hope this album never, ever gets a remastered. It should have stayed forbidden all this time. And you know what's the sad thing about this? You know what's the sad thing? There are people out there that actually like this album. Which kudos to you for liking it, but
I want to know what I want to debate with anybody who thinks this album's any good, because I want to know what do people find enjoying about this album. This is like almost the equivalent to Morbid Angel's Illud Divinium Insanus.
Which, for some reason, that Morbid Angel Salute, I mean, that album sold like 200,000 copies in the first week. My God. But this album, oh God. You know what? Let's just move on. Move on. Move on.
So yeah, this is not Black Sabbath. And to quote Ren from the Thralls of Metal, because this was funny, fuck this album and fuck anyone who likes it. And by the way, your mother is a whore. So there you go. Arthur, are you back?
I guess
Arthur, do you read?
I guess it's trying, but let's continue.
So after the shitfest that was Forbidden, the band pretty much lays dormant for a while in terms of studio output, but we would get an original reunion with Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill for the big reunion run from 97 through 06, doing the reunion album, even a new song, Psycho Man, Ozfest. This was the Ozfest era of Sabbath we were entering. But then after 2006, they decided to take a break, and then Tony and Geezer would get back together with Dio and Vinny, and they take on a project of a Black Sabbath Dio year's greatest hits with a few new songs like Shadow of the Wind, Devil Cried. Then they decide, hey, let's do another album, and they originally wanted to release it as a Black Sabbath album, but thanks to Sharon, they couldn't use the name Black Sabbath, so they decided to go with the name Heaven and Hell, and in 2009 on Roadrunner Records would release The Devil You Know.
My God. This is my number 9. I mean, this goes back to the early Heaven and Hell era Black Sabbath. I mean, Bible Black. Oh my God, the creation, how Lucifer became Lucifer, Atom and Evo, Flow the Tears. This album to me is perfection. To me, I mean, it's a good comeback to me, in my opinion. And I think Raphael had it at number 2. But this album to me, from the album cover, which looks metal as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, like I said, Bible Black's the standout song of the album. Oh my! I can listen to that song over and over and over again.
I, meanwhile, had Devil You Know at 13. The reason why the album fell was because while this was the same lineup that recorded Mob Rules and Dehumanizer, I don't think it lived up to those two albums. And you got a bunch of goofy songs on here, like Rock and Roll Angel and Eating the Cannibal. Not a very good song, but Bible Black, Fall into Tears, Adam and Evil, Turn of the Screw, Breaking into Heaven. Those are really good songs.
Yeah.
There are some great songs, but there are some stinkers on here,
Yeah.
and that's why. And also, I like the production musically. Vocally, though, it seems like they really compressed the hell out of Dio's voice. Granted, he was older, and this was before he discovered that he was going through stomach cancer that eventually led to his death. But he still belts it out and did a great job. And I do like how they kept the meaty guitars of Dehumanizer going on this. So, yeah.
But
the reason why it fell was because there were a couple of songs that were questionable, but a good chunk of it was good.
Yeah. Archer had it at number 9. And I think that's it for The Devil You Know. So, and then of course a year later.
And then afterwards, a year later. Yeah, while technically this was not a Black Sabbath album, we decided to include it in the ranking because it fit. But yeah, unfortunately, a year later, we lost Ronnie James Dio. We miss you. However, after that happened, then the speculation started. Are we going to get a new Black Sabbath album with Ozzy back? And eventually, word came out that they were going to come back together with Ozzy and make a new album. Now, at first, I was kind of bummed because it was around this time we heard Tony Iommi was battling cancer. And he's still kicking today. Thank God for that. So this would be an original reunion with the exception of one. And the big story of this was Bill Ward's involvement. He was at first going to be a part of the 13 recording, but then there was some internal conflicts, mostly revolving around money, and the rest of the guys felt that Bill probably wasn't going to be able to play the way they felt he should. However, the big reason is Sharon Osbourne basically forced Bill Ward out of the band because she didn't want to pay him the same amount as Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer. She was just going to give him, like, money for like a touring musician, and that's bullshit.
That's bullshit. I mean, Bill Ward's one of the founding members of Sabbath. He should have paid.
And apparently, when he was drumming during the Ozfest years, he was still kicking ass. So he probably could have done a good job on this album, but we'll never know.
But regardless, now back to the album.
In 2013, we get the release of the final album, 13. So yeah, we got Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer. We get Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine to come in on session drums, and he did a really good job. He was just solid meat and potatoes, although I think if Bill was in, he would have added more jazzy parts, but Brad did a good job. And I initially had this album ahead of Dehumanizer, but now it's at number 9 for me. This was the perfect album to send the band off, and Ozzy singing his ass off on this album, and a lot of these riffs really kind of harken back to the old days of the Ozzy era, and stuff we may not know. This is the first album since Heaven and Hell where Jeff Nichols isn't doing keyboards, and the first album with Ozzy since 1978. And they come together and just put out a massive album. This is one of my favorites of 2013. You know, songs like The End of the Beginning, God is Dead is like, that's going to go down as an eventual classic.
Yeah.
Loner, Age of Reason,
Dear Father.
Zeitgeist is kind of like Plan a Caravan Part 2. Dear Father, Age of Reason.
I felt that this album, they kind of went back and listened to the old discography and took bits and pieces of every single other albums and created this. Well, I mean, what a way to end Sabbath. I mean, I had this on number 10. So, you know, what a great way to end the discography of Sabbath. Loner, God is Dead, End of the Beginning, my God, Ozzy just being Ozzy. And it's unfortunately that Bill Ward wasn't part of the album, and if he was part of the album, it could have been even better. But you know, Brad Wilk did a fine job. Let's not deny he's a great drummer. He did a fine job in the album. And you know, it's gonna go as a classic because of course we had Ozzy back in the band, and of course
Tony and Geezer kicking ass.
Yeah, so Archer had this at number 14. Hannah actually had the album. Just see where she had it. Had it at number 7. And Raphael had it at number 4. So a lot of love for 13. I mean, for good reasons.
And this album for some reason, this album gets some shit from fans saying, oh, this is bad. They're wrong. They're so wrong. This album's the perfect send-off. Although I will say, this album, in my opinion, should have come out after Dehumanizer, and it would have been great. They should have just scrapped Cross Purposes and Forbidden Out. Been like, hey, after Dehumanizer, take a break, and then this. And it would have been perfect. So that wraps up the Black Sabbath album ranking.
Yes, and of course, eventually went out on tour for a couple of years later, and
2017 they announced that they're done.
For now, that we know of. Because there's always a chance, well, I don't know, with Ozzy battling Parkinson's, it might not happen, but maybe a studio album would be nice or something. But, you know, only time will tell. But overall, for being the first rank 'em all that we were doing the show, I think it was a success. I mean, Black Sabbath being the first band in metal. We went through the entire era, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the unforgettable. Overall, it was a well-balanced trip.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically to go back to what we were saying earlier, without Black Sabbath, none of us would be here.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, look at everything that they inspired in their wakes. Metal, doom, stoner, sludge, thrash, prog.
Everything.
Everything. Every single solitary thing. It's can't even put to words. Can't even put to words right there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the episode in a nutshell. So as far as what's coming up next,
Well,
next up, we're gonna be waiting a month. It's album of the year, Christmas presents time.
Yes. So the reason we're gonna wait is because, of course, we're gonna try to catch up with all the albums we have yet to listen and catch up, because there's so much that even me, I have even gotten to listen to. Like, I'm still
Same
not
here.
haven't listened to the entire Blood Red Throne album in its entirety. I still need so much to listen to. And plus, since we're doing the Secret Santa exchange, some gifts might take a while to arrive to each other's places. So we're gonna give it time. So we might do the album of the year episode maybe the week before Christmas. Or before Christmas, so around that time, around the Spider-Man week, where Spider-Man get released, which is gonna be fucking amazing. But we're gonna wait a while. We're gonna have a little bit of break, trying to recollect over the entire year, what albums we're gonna have at the end of the year, because it's not an easy task, especially for us who we, buy a lot of albums on a daily basis and listen to a lot of music. It's a daunting task because an album can change everything. It can change everything. So, so stay tuned for that. We're gonna hopefully, we can have the entire gang by this time. We're gonna try our best to at least have them and just have a blast to end of the year. I think you muted yourself.
And then after that, eventually, when we come back in January, we're supposed to have the Jeremy Wagner interview by that point.
Yeah.
So
hopefully by that time.
Hoping by
and
then
I think,
we'll get him.
and I think the next,
it's going to be top 10 punk albums
and the gothic metal episode.
Gothic metal albums.
And the eventually metal and pop culture episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, we still have a lot of ideas. We still have so many bands that we're gonna do eventually. Because I know eventually we want to do another album discussion.
Like, yeah.
Probably
I think one of the albums we were thinking about was like Emperor Nightside Eclipse.
Yes, probably that one. Or Emperor Nightside Eclipse would be a perfect album to do. There's a lot of albums we have yet to touch. Like, I know eventually I know you want to do a Death rank 'em all. That would be a pretty fun episode to do. I want us to do a Death Doom episode because I've been begging for one.
Albums.
Yes, or give me a Swallow Sun episode. Oh my god, I will die. But anyways, hope you all enjoy it, because my god, this was a daunting task to do, especially listen to the albums like Forbidden to do this list. Oh god.
Yeah.
The pain we go through, people, trust me, the pain we go through to bring you all for you.
Yeah. But that does it for this episode. As far as what we got coming up, or myself. So I intend on reviewing the Obscura album later today, and then I might be back on here on Twitch later tonight for a gaming stream. So if you want to catch me on the flip side of that, be around later tonight, and we're going to have some fun. But until tonight, horns high, and we will see you all in the next one.